Hey, y'all, this is season 2 of the Player Development Pod, and this season we are highlighting those who are doing the work. I am so thankful and appreciative to have James Sherman from Texas State here with us. James, you can kind of tell us about yourself. I got to know you from some of the player development calls we've had over the last year, especially COVID. We were all getting to know each other, but if you can, just tell people about yourself.
Yeah, man, those were a blast. Definitely fortunate and blessed to be able to get on there and get connected with a lot of guys in the same field, but man, I'm from Montgomery, Alabama originally. Grew up there my whole life. Went to a private school down there. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of opportunities growing up, whether it was playing sports or just being involved in the community. Found myself coming out to Texas. Had some small Group 5 offers coming out of high school down south, and found Texas State was a home back in 2014. So I graduated, packed up everything, moved 800 miles over to San Marcos, Texas, and I've been here ever since. So I was fortunate enough to play college football at Texas State as a specialist. So I kind of played football. I was kind of just drinking Powerade on the sideline, just hanging out. But did that for 4.5 years. Got a couple pieces of paper that had my name on them that are worth more money than I know, and didn't have any debt after that. And was really, really fortunate to have some things line up after that to put me in the situation I am now. So been really blessed, really fortunate. Learned a lot these past few years working with Coach Spav down here in San Marcos, but just blessed, man. There's a lot of really good things that have been going on down here, and love being just a little part of it. So
awesome. So you're almost close to going on 10 years in San Marcos. Nice. So tell us about, that transition. So you finished playing. Can you kind of talk about your transition into the role that you're in now?
Sure. So my whole time playing college football, I found myself surrounded by student athletes, whether they're football or another sport, that were trying to grow holistically. And that was through different ministries on campus, like Fellowship of Christian Athletes, or being involved with our church, or if that was something like SAC, Student Athlete Advisory Committee, being able to be around those guys from not only conference level, school level as well. And with that, just leaning into just the whole aspect of what it means to have a student athlete experience and try to make that as good as it is. So for me, when I graduated and finished playing, I thought I was going to go be a graduate assistant for some athletic department somewhere, and that's what I was looking for. And God said, no, not today. He guided me a little different, put some steps in, and skipped a couple and put me in a situation that I thought was bigger than myself, which it really was. It took me a good 4 or 5 months to get used to the job that I was in and really accept that I was ready and prepared and that I was equipped to do what I was doing with Texas State. And what really happened was I learned how to lean into people and how to take advantage of those situations that I was in. And from that, it was definitely a sharp learning curve, because the way that the role is supposed to be and the way that I learned it's supposed to be wasn't happening here. And that's because this role has changed so much with the way that college athletics and football specifically has changed in the past few years. So I was really fortunate to get plugged in with a lot of guys, obviously you being one of those. And then obviously K-Wash right up the road at the University of Texas, listen to Mikado up at A&M and some guys like that. And then just being plugged in, just finding some best practices, learning what works best for us here at Texas State, and just adapting to those. And all the while just being in grad school and trying to figure out what next steps are for my life as well. So just a little bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk about the role and how it's changed over the, last 5-10 years in college football. Could you talk about the responsibilities you do have in the role?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one thing, talking with K-Wash, especially early. Obviously, the University of Texas is a lot larger than our university here in San Marcos, Texas State. And with that, he was just teaching me best practices, man. He was teaching me how to come alongside guys, how to let them be themselves, how to continue to push them and help them to grow. But with that, I only saw a 10%, 15% of what my actual job entails. So from that, it was how do I connect with those practices, those thought processes, and then merge that into the role that I'm currently in. So for me, I get to be involved in so many different capacities. I get to be involved still with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which made a huge impact on my life. Not only in high school, but in college as well. I'm still involved heavily in our church here in San Marcos. And then on top of that, I'm working with our financial aid office, our athletic administrators from a compliance side, working with academics, working with housing across the city, on campus, off campus stuff. Been able to do a lot of stuff from a career services standpoint, and then anything and everything in between. So that's anything from the schedules that go out to our players in the days, in the morning and the afternoon, that's getting those guys plugged in with potential job opportunities and internships, helping them correct resumes, anything in between. Man, it's been a blast. I've learned a lot about myself doing it too, and I've learned a lot more about people and just where they're at and what they want to do, and listening and understanding where they're coming from, and then guiding to make that a little better. Because a lot of times, kind of assume that you don't understand where people are coming from, but I think that has come to fruition of just actually listening and then understanding from that, how do you respond to what they can receive and how they communicate best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
You talked about like that. I always tell people that, I know you probably get all the messages on LinkedIn and Twitter about your position and students, even on campus or former players. And I just love that a lot of people see certain things, like they may just see the community aspect, or they may see you on, at the games, or may see you around, but they don't understand the holistic development that you're providing for the student athletes. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's going to help a lot of listeners. A lot of these listeners are, college students, some people in the profession, some people in other departments, because I know you've had those conversations with other people in other departments or campuses that want to learn more. So appreciate you sharing that. This next question, I know the answer to this question, but I always ask it because everybody asks me, and it's just like one of the funniest questions I ever get. What does your day look like?
Man, it's the most structured thing ever. I wake up at this time and I go to bed at this time. I'm just kidding. It's hilarious because, man, you listen to like these podcasts and you listen to people talk about how they work their businesses and their jobs, and they try to space out time for this and for that, and they try to stick to this and this time and that time. And I try to do that for a little bit. Man, it's just so crazy how, like, especially at our level, player development has no name and has no day-to-day structure. To me, it's like a seasons thing. Like we're in summer right now, and summer and spring are like our Super Bowl for player development. And I think people know that.
Oh yeah.
But man, it's so interesting. One day you could come in I wake up at 3:45, 4 o'clock every day during the week. I'll come into the office. I'll get my quiet time upstairs. I'll go down and lift. Then I'll come back upstairs and start the day. And with that, I could come back upstairs and I could work on something with our guys for academics for the next 2 hours, or could lean into messaging for our team with the head coach for another hour and a half, or we could be talking about schedules for the fall camp. We just got out of a meeting with the head coach about what fall camp's going to look like, just kind of finalizing that stuff up. Or it could be X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. Something may happen with a student athlete where it's an unexpected circumstance. You got to take care of them. You got to get them somewhere, whatever it may be. Position coach needs this, position coach needs that. Somebody on campus needs something. So from that, biggest thing on what I say with what my day consists of is it just changes. There's ebbs and flows. You learn to react really well, and you learn to serve really, really well. And I think the biggest thing from a player development side is serving, because I think the best way that you can do this job is with a servant's heart, where you love people where they're at and show them that with the way that you respond to when they ask you questions, or noticing something and being aware about the needs that our student athletes have to make sure their experience is the best that it could possibly be. And if you can do that, I think regardless if you're at a Power 5 school and you're elite and you've got the Nike contract, or if you're NAIA and you're putting a patch over some starter gear and you're wearing it, I think you can do it at a really high level, because it doesn't matter if you're getting paid 7 figures or if you're not getting paid at all. I think serving is something that changes not only the people that you do serve, but it changes you as well.
Absolutely. And, I appreciate you always sharing advice. We're going to start to get to some questions that kind of sound like advice. Before we get there, what's the biggest thing you've learned in the role?
I think one of the biggest things, for sure, there's a couple. I think the biggest one for me is be yourself and being authentic, which is twofold. I think you have to be able to take care of yourself and come from a good spot before you give to other people. And if this job is a calling, in my opinion. I don't think it's a job. If your calling is big enough, then you need to be prepared in your heart and your soul and your emotional capacity for whatever comes, right? And I think with that, if you can be real and you can be honest with who you are as yourself, you can do that with other people as well. Because at the end of the day, I think it's Groeschel that runs the leadership podcast that everybody follows and all that good stuff. He talks all the time about.
That's my favorite one.
It's so good. Every single time he closes with, what is it? We'd rather follow somebody that's real than somebody that's always right. And I think that's something that sticks with me to this day, because, man, like, if you can't be authentic with people, they're not going to be authentic back with you, and then you're faking funk and they're faking it back, and it's tough to vibe with somebody like that. But if somebody comes up to you and they're genuine, they're honest, and they're trustworthy, and they're being themselves, I'm gonna follow you every single day of the week. And I think that comes alongside guys too, because if you want to meet people where they're at, they want to be reciprocating that feeling back to you. They want to feel that. They want to feel you're being real with them as well. And that comes with not assuming that you know their background. That comes with assuming you don't know what their struggles are. And that comes with showing your scars a little bit too, with where you've had experiences in the past, good, bad, and indifferent. So I think people meet you there. And I think the second thing with that is asking for help when you need help. And that can be as deep as you want it to be, and that can be as superficial as you want it to be. That can be from, hey, I need some help with it from an intern getting stuff plugged in on Teamworks, or something as deep as, hey, I need to get somebody to talk to that can hold me accountable for the life decisions that I'm making. I don't feel as whole as I should be, right? Something anywhere in between those things. Because I don't think if you don't ask for help, you're probably hurting yourself more than you think you are. And that comes as well with the authenticity piece as well.
Absolutely. So you said something like, I love your authentic answer. And you're saying, taking care of yourself, before you can take care of others. I always wanted to ask, whenever we get on those flights to go play games, and the stewardess, I believe is the flight attendant would say, hey, this is the bag. You got to put it over your face first before you can help somebody. I always wanted to put that in my office, ask them, can I please have that, so I can remind myself, for me to help anybody, I have to help myself first and then help others. So that's pretty cool. You talked about interns and asked people for help. What does support look like for you in that role? It seems like you're a one man show. I've been there before, but what does support look like for you in that role?
Man, I think in life you get what you give, and I think if you're just pouring into other people, they're going to pour back into you. So for me, on paper, I have no interns in player development side of things with our football program, but with that, I'm plugged in with our academics on campus. I'm plugged in with our compliance people on campus. I'm plugged in with our development people on campus, our high-level administrators, all the way down to our position coach, their grad assistants, their student interns, our recruiting guys, our creative media guys, our director of operations. If you understand that you can give those people stuff at times, you can recognize that they're going to reciprocate that back and help you out along the way. So for me, man, it's just finding good people, allowing them to fail at times if they're young, and then guiding them from that. Recognizing that there's some task that you don't have to do yourself to get them done. So, for instance, we had academic sheets that needed to be updated about 2 weeks ago, and one of our interns was hanging out, and he came by and was like, hey, is there anything I can do for you? And I'm like, yeah, man, there's this. Honestly, this is the most tedious task of all, and if you don't mind doing it, that would be super helpful.
No doubt.
And he goes off and he does it, and he doesn't complain about it. He doesn't say anything bad about it. He comes back and all done perfectly. And I'm like, dude, that just saved me so much emotional and turmoil and mental stress, for just a real quick question, and he was fired up to help,
Man, yeah.
So really fortunate that we're at a part in our program right now that can happen. But I think deciding what you give out to people is just as important as allowing people to do that as well. Because if you're going to stress about the quality of it being done the way you need it to be, then maybe it's not the right thing to hand off. So it's an interesting dichotomy between those two things.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Shout out to the interns that come around and ask for extra help. Shout out to all the interns out there that are helping in player development. You guys don't understand. Like James just said, there's nothing like walking back into your office and you're like, oh man, I got to get this done before. Man, just like that. I don't even want to call it a heartbreak. It's just like that moment you're just like, oh man.
It's crazy, man.
I got to get this done before I go home.
Dude, it's so crazy because, that's in a really weird way, that's how I got my job. Right? People expect to get a job from sending out an email to doing this, that, and the other. But I graduated. One of our assistant coaches, Coach Ron Antoine, he's at Lamar right now. He came up to me when I was graduating. He said, hey, you gone to talk to the administrative yet about potentially doing something with him? And I trying to figure out next steps. I was like, no, I haven't. Went over and talked to who is actually now our athletic director, Don Coriel, and our development athletic director as well, Travis Gomer. I was like, hey, I'm trying to find something in the meantime. Hey, if you come back in January and need a job, come see me. So came back, had a job for me, and I was working for those guys as an intern, just part-time, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And long story short, I was working at an event. The head coach came in, saw me working at the event, had a conversation with him for 10 minutes. The work that I'd done in the past when I was playing ended up to another thing, and he offered me a job within the week. So that's when I look at those interns and I'm like, okay,
Nice.
if I can trust you with something, I know that I can trust you with a job if somebody asks me about something later on, right?
Absolutely.
So, like, I think we talk about all the time, it's how you do anything is how you do everything. And, like, the way that you respond to the most menial tasks mean more to people that get it than the ones that are the biggest things, right? Because if you can make sure that everybody stays in line during football camps during the summer, I'm going to trust you with academic sheets in the fall. And then after that, when somebody goes, hey, we need somebody to fill this recruiting job, even if it's not here, I'm going to recommend you, bro. Like, no question about it, because that's
Right.
how I got my shot.
Well, since we're there talking about it, let's talk about what advice. Let's continue talking about it. What advice do you have for those that are looking to get into position? You gave a little bit, but do you have any more nuggets for people that are looking to get into the position that you have?
Oh, yeah. I would say the biggest thing, like we talked about earlier, serving. But I would say serving without expecting something in return, which is so
Nice.
hard, man. It's probably innately in our human nature to expect something after we do something for somebody else. But if you can serve
Right.
without any expectation on the back end, and be available in that and be fully present in whatever task it is that they're asking you to do and not taking anything personally, golly, that goes such a long way. I mean, that could be more about like a life talk than it is just getting a player development job talk. But what you are
Absolutely.
is what you attract. And I think if you can live out a life that's full, meaningful, and authentic, people respond to that in a way that super special, and they're going to reciprocate that back to you, and they're going to take care of you. And even if they don't, like, you're setting an example for somebody that's got a role bigger than you, and who knows how that could change their
Right.
life later. You're just sowing seeds.
No, I appreciate that. That's something that, I've learned, like you said, your job, like how you got in your job is kind of, I got in mind, just serving, doing what I was doing, and somebody, noticed. I think a lot of interns, I would tell them all the time, there were interns I noticed. So like interns would come up to me and say, hey, can you write me a letter of recommendation? And they'd be shocked at how much I could write on a letter of rec. And they're like, well, how did you notice? Because I'm watching you. Like, I'm watching you. I see how you do things. I know I can count on you. So yeah, you didn't work for me specifically. And, you may have worked for recruiting or equipment. Like I've written a lot for equipment managers, letters of rec. And they're just like, I'm just like, because the way you went, like you said, how you do everything is how you do anything. Every day at practice, rain, we both worked in Texas, so rain, heat, whatever, you're giving amazing effort. And I think if you're a college student listening to this, or you're an intern, or you're a young professional, really honestly anybody, like continue to do what you do, because you just never know who's watching. Like you said, I think it's one of my favorite Bible verses, don't despise small beginnings, because once again, you never know what, those can lead into. What's the best advice you've received in your life?
Personally, I think it comes with the authenticity piece of it, being just as real as you can possibly be in everything that you do. I think that is just absolutely massive. But another one of those things is like leaning into where people have been in the past and learning from their mistakes. Because I'm a firm believer that there's nothing new under the sun, in the sense of like, obviously things do change, but things find a way to like have the same like foundational points to them, regardless of where you're at, regardless of what level you're at, regardless of what position you're in. But I think at the end of the day, one of those things is if you can keep it real with people, they're going to respond in a way that's very, very genuinely back to you. They're going to be generous. They're going to take care of you,
Right.
as well as long as you give that back out to them. And I think from that, man, I think like knowing like who you are and knowing where your values are and just sticking with that for as long as you possibly can, and don't negotiate with those values, that's when everybody will just understand and respect you for where you're coming from, and then don't waver, right? Because that's one thing I've been very fortunate, been around a lot of really good coaches, a lot of really good student athletes that hold values to a certain standard and they don't change them. And then I've been around coaches and athletes that are the complete opposite. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But just people are the way that they are, and taking those things and holding true to those things and finding what fits you and how you can take that to the next level. Because every single person that walks in the door is not going to come from a traditional household that had private school education, that knows what's next. Some people are going to be first gen. Some people are going to have no relationship with their parents. Some people are going to have two different sets of parents. Some people are going to have 12 brothers and sisters. Some are going to have none. And I think the way that you can relate to anybody like that is being authentic and listening to what their story is. I think as you keep it simple with that, that's where people just feel that love back, and they're going to trust you. And then it's just the two-way street. It's going both ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's a practical nugget you can share? You share a lot of stuff, but like as practical nugget, like in a sense, let me say this, like for instance, for me, I created a meeting form, right? That always told me what my, to-dos were to do or not to, I created a meeting form that had, these are the things I need to get done, because you know what it is. You go to a meeting and then you get pulled and you get pulled here and you're like, hey, what was that? So what would be your practical nugget?
I would kind of piggyback off of that from the sense of like writing things down. But I would recognize that there's like practically that there's different levels of urgency to like what you're doing, right? Like some things need like immediate attention, and some things are like, okay, I don't need to do this until tomorrow, or I need to do this by the end of the week, right? Like doing something for the head coach is a little different than doing something for a class that doesn't start till August 22nd. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So finding what that is for you. And then giving those values and then moving them around in your notes. I've got a tablet that allows me to like circle things and move them around. And it's been the biggest blessing because I don't have to put numbers on the side of things anymore. Because I would put numbers on the side of things and then I would have to scratch them out. And then I'd have to write another number and I'd have to, and it was a whole deal. But I think with that, being able to write things down and then adjust as things go throughout the day. That's the biggest practical one on that side. And I think like from the holistic thing that we were talking about earlier, making sure you're taking care of yourself. I mean, people say this to the end of time, but I think like reading is like the biggest like way to grow personally, and then communicating what you learn in the way that you live, in the way that you have conversations with other people. Because I think if you don't do that, like you're just wasting what you read, right? Being able to read things and then shifting that into like your team culture, or the way that you respond to people, or the way you set up your programming and the way that you do X, Y, and Z. It's really, really interesting because what you take in is what you're going to put back out. So that's probably two practical things for me. That writing down piece, and then just being a bookworm, just soaking in as much knowledge as possible.
Awesome. So you kind of led into the next question. You take care of so many people. You talked about reading, how that helps you. What else do you do to take care of yourself? You're taking care of 120 guys that are playing. You're taking care of a staff. You take maybe 60 people, including coaches, support staff. Your hands are in a lot of things. You're helping people reach their potential, be it player, staff, whatever it may be. How do you take care of yourself?
Two biggest things there. My faith is obviously like my biggest thing foundationally. I think that's like centralized. And I think like a lot of people that work in player development need this in some capacity. But I think there has to be something greater than yourself into what you lean into. I mean, that gives me strength.
Absolutely.
That gives me hope for what's next. And it gives me an example and a character of how I should be living my life. And from that, I think you're finding that community that you can base your life off of through like accountability and people that you can trust and have conversations with that can check you, but they can also uplift you at the same time. So for me, man, that's like people that I'm plugged in with my church. That's my priest. That's my girlfriend. She's phenomenal. She's actually about to move down to Texas, which I'm fired up. So that's going to give me some new life. And then on top of that, just a few people that I work with, a few people that I've been around in the community, a few people that I've played with, just finding different outlets to plug into and just making sure that we're giving each other life on that too. And then from that as well, I think the routine thing helps me out so much, man. Like I wake up early, and part of that's just because I'm crazy. I'm just kidding. But I love waking up early and just getting the whole day ready. I wake up at 3:45, 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday. Any time of year, it's just, it sounds absolutely berserk, man, but leaning into that, making sure that my day is prepared before everybody else wakes up gives me a sense of accomplishment, which is crazy because I wake up and say I wake up at 4, I don't eat lunch till 11. I've been awake for 7 hours and I haven't eaten lunch yet. And it's, I don't know, kind of a weird perspective on life, but it makes sure that my foundation's set. I find my quiet time in the morning, I get into scripture, I get into some worship music, I go down, get a good sweat in, and then I'm like, okay, I've won this day. Let's see what's next. So those two things for me.
Let's go.
And then we kind of talked earlier about interns, but it's really just a big picture, just people to lean on. We're not designed in this world to do it by ourselves. And I think the more real you are with yourself, and recognizing that there's not as big of a gap between us and players as we like to think that we are, Guys respond to that
Yes.
well. So for me, like, I'll go hang out with our guys. Like, I've got guys that come over to my apartment and hang out. Like, we'll play Xbox together. We'll go to church together. We'll go eat together. I mean, it's not saying I do that every day of the week, but man, that's like, I find life in our student athletes and the stories that they're writing themselves, just being available for those guys. So a lot of that, man, I've been fortunate to work for a head coach that, I mean, he's off the charts. If there's something that we want to do, go for it. If you think it's best for the program, go for it. You want to make an alumni newsletter, go for it. You want to make a resume book, go for it. You want to bring in a speaker that's never spoke at Texas State, go for it. So been really, really fortunate there, man. Hands haven't been tied at all. And I mean, I thank God for that, really, because it's been one door open after the next door open. Granted, there have been a few doors closed, but I've been really, really fortunate in what I've been able to do here. And that's truly given me a life when I look at it from more of a big picture perspective, opposed to day in, day out, what holds right in front of me, opposed to the 10,000 foot, that view. So
yeah. So I like what you said, about the players being closer than we think. I remember I started going, mental health, going to see a counselor this past year and talking to players about it. Like, yeah, I thought it was weird too, and it actually was pretty cool. And I was able, like, I feel that, they're like, how do you feel afterwards? I'm like, I feel good. Actually, I want to have another session. I can't wait to the next session. And just those moments are like, for instance, this, like, talking to one of the players and, hey, coach, I'm, just talking like, hey, I'm going to my girlfriend's softball game tomorrow. I know your family isn't in town yet. Do you want to come by? Yeah, I'll be about what time? 2:00? All right. It's awesome. I'll see you there. And just how far that goes with people. You just, all I'm doing is showing up, showing him I'm there. He's sitting with her family. I'm just at the game cheering on. Like, hey, you said 15, right? Okay, cool. Let me cheer for 15, And so, I think, like you said, they are. I think so many times and they want that. They want that interaction. When you think about it like yourself, you think about a story like yourself. You move 8 hours away, right? You're in this city, you're in this town, you're all away from everything that, makes you comfortable. And you get to provide now, things that you may have seen and may not have seen to student athletes. And I think, a lot of times I love how you say it. I know for me, I just want to shatter like ego in college athletics, like just shatter it and just be real. The players just want real. It's like you said about the Craig Rochelle. They don't care. They don't care about, they know all that stuff. They know your resume. They know when you play. They look all that stuff. All that stuff's on Google. They can look it all up, so I just think the authenticity, I learned that at one university I worked at. Like, guys were okay with hard truth. They just wanted truth, So
there's no question about it. There's no question about it. I think that's one thing that, we could go on for hours about this, but I think objective truth is something that people don't recognize, especially in student athletes' lives, that there's a real thing there, and that's okay, especially if you walk alongside these guys. Right. Because that's, man, when I played, man, if we had some guys that wanted to walk alongside of me, I'm there, and that's all I'm trying to do for these guys. And it's so funny because, man, we get these guys in, we're recruiting, and you get to tell them how much you're going to love them when they come here and all that stuff. And then they end up not coming here, and these guys are like, Coach, I'm so sorry, man. I'm sorry I'm not coming there. And I'm like, for what, man? Like, go do what you got to do, man. If you need some help, give me a call. You got my cell. It's still
best decision for you.
Go do what you got to do. Yeah. Of course, I'm upset you're not coming here. We don't get to spend a lot of time together, but go do what you got to do, man. I'm going to cheer for you. Right. Unless you're playing the Bobcats, then I'll wait till after the game to cheer for you.
That happened. I had a situation like that similar last year. The university I was at, one kid, he decided to go to another school, and I DM'd him like, hey man, it was great getting to know you and your mom. I think you're a great kid. Continue to be you. Have a great time at this university. He was like, wow, appreciate you so much. I felt so bad. I said, dude, look, at the end of the day, here's the deal. If the Houston Texans call me, I'm gone. So you need to make the best decision for yourself, and so I always tell, I tell recruits that all the time. All right. Well, James, thank you so much for being here. Oh, rapid fire. You should know this. You listen to Groeschel. All right. I have some questions for you. Right. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book called The Jewish Roots of Jesus as the Bridegroom. So it's mostly about how Jesus acts as the bridegroom of the church, and how he takes care of his people in that role, and how that's connected with the cultural roots of who Jesus was during his time period and how that relates to us now.
Nice. That's deep right there. What daily discipline are you working on?
Right now, I'm currently working on fruits and vegetables on a very simple note,
Nice.
but and just like super
Yes.
simple. I don't get enough vegetables in every day. That's one thing my girlfriend's trying to teach me how to do right now. But that, and I think big picture listening, anybody and everybody, just being present 100% where I'm at and listening to people in their full conversation.
Well, I know vegetables. I could agree with you on that. One thing I've done is I've added colors. So instead of like vegetables, I add colors. So I have to have two different colors because vegetables, everybody goes green. It's like, all right, well, let me get, celery or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's like the colors have helped me not think vegetable. It helps me think art, which kind of gets my mind going. All right, since we're talking about food, if you had $25 gift card for lunch, where would you go eat in San Marcos?
For lunch, I'm going to Tap Room. It is the best burger in San Marcos, hands down. They can put anything on a burger that you want.
Nice.
I'd probably get an egg, some bacon, and then a side of sweet potato fries.
Wow, nice. I like that. All right, $125 for dinner. Where are you going?
Oh, Golden Corral. No, I'm just kidding. There's a place in town called...
That'll last you all year.
Right. I got a place in town called Cody's Bistro. He's one of our program's really good buddies.
Nice.
He hangs out with us all the time on visits and stuff like that. He's just phenomenal. He makes a unbelievable pork chop and a ribeye. So now that my mouth's watering, that'd be it.
Nice. If you could join a band or a music group, past or present, which one would it be?
The Beatles, without a doubt, man.
Oh,
I think
nice.
those guys had it figured out way ahead of time. Drug use aside, but they made movies,
Yes.
They made some phenomenal music way ahead of their time period, man. They had a blast doing it, and I mean that would be such a cool time to be living into.
Right. Okay, speaking of movies, who would you want to co-star in a movie with, action and comedy?
Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg
Nice.
is just absolutely goated, in my opinion. I think he puts out really good movies. I think he's got a little bit of range. He's not the most famous actor, but I think he has a really good heart.
Right.
He does it for the right reasons. And, I mean, he's just... Anytime him and Will Ferrell in a movie together, and if I'm not crying by the end of that movie laughing, I'm not doing it right.
Right. Yeah. So would you use him for your action and comedy because of his range?
For sure. If I can do a second one, I would want to do one with The Rock. But I don't know which way I'd put. They're both pretty funny, and they both get a good action on their kill too.
I was going to say, yeah, you got some versatility there.
It's a good pair.
Nice versatility. Okay. What sport do you wish you played growing up?
Dude, I wish I played.
Or you would have tried?
Oh, golf. I wish I played golf growing up because I started playing golf like 2 months ago. And it's like super similar to kicking, which sounds really weird. But it has taken up entirely too much of my thought capacity in the past 6 weeks. But man, it's a blast. We get out there with some of the coaches on staff and go play for a bit and just have a good time, talk about life, and lose some white balls along the way. So
Nice. Okay. So since we're talking about golf, PGA or LIV?
Oh, dude, I feel bad for this right now because I think the LIV Tour is going to be really interesting. I don't know how they're going to be able to live up to the hype. But I mean, Tiger Woods came out with something today talking about the longevity of it.
I saw that.
It's not what the PGA is. And I know that's what they're trying to do, but it feels like a spin-off XFL vibe when they don't need it. But hey, kudos to those guys for making 18,000 billion figures, whatever it is that they're making for guaranteed money on their tour.
There's no doubt.
They can have that though, man.
I was like, Tiger, yeah.
I'm good.
I mean, that's one, like I've heard the debates. I'm like, I get it on both sides. And then to finish the show, how can our, followers, how can they follow you on, Twitter, your social media?
Sure. I don't post a lot on Twitter. I post every now and then. But that's going to be James Sherman 43. And then Instagram is the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. If you go onto Texas State Bobcats website, you can find my email there. Feel free to reach out to me, give me a contact. If we want to link up, talk through anything, give me a shout. Love linking in with people, young, old, middle-aged, whatever it may be. So been really fortunate to get to where I'm at. I love telling my story. It's not the most crazy story, but man, it's my story, and it's been something that's really impacted and shaped my life. So I'll be more than willing to tell anybody and give some guys some tips and tricks on how to get moving.
Awesome. Well, James, thank you so much for being on. Appreciate all you're doing in that space. You've been constant and consistent there. You've been, consistent in our player development and the community we built. So we appreciate all your efforts, and that's it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me on, and everything the past 2-3 years. It's been a blast.